Good morning and a warm welcome everyone to another interesting session of PGPEM Leadership Series. Today we have one of the dynamic leaders who is known for his innovative spirit and progressive vision, MD and CEO of Thermax Ltd, Mr. Ashish Bhandari. Prior to joining Termax, Mr. Ashish was the Vice President, India and South Asia region at Baker Hughes, formerly a GE company. During his 15 illustrious years with GE, he held primarily responsibility for various BHGE product lines. He is also credited with building GE Oil and Gas into one of GE's biggest business in India. His prior work experience includes Schlumberger, consulting with McKinsey and Company, and 2 startups overseas. He is an engineering graduate from IIT Mumbai with MBA from the Duke University. Without much ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Ashish Bhandari. We welcome you, Ashish, and would like to hear and learn from you in this interactive session today about your journey to the CEO of Thermax.
All right, Ankita, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here as well. Thanks. So look, I'll just start a very, very brief introduction. Yeah, won't talk much because you've got quite a few questions and answers planned. It's a perfectly good Sunday morning. So the only way it will be of any use is if I have something to share that's of interest to you. And if you all ask me questions that will help you in some way. Yeah, so let's make this interactive. Let's make this a complete two-way discussion. It's a safe zone. You can ask me anything and I'll do my best. Some things I may not know much about, but I'll still answer. So that's part of the job of being a leader. You get to answer questions you have no idea about as well. Last thing I would say, I'll speak and when I give my answers in terms of if I was reflecting on what I can say that would be of some use to you, is I'll try and connect it to what it means to build a career. Yeah, and so that is distinct from being an entrepreneur. That's distinct from being a business person or being a professor. Any of those multitude of options that are available post your MBA. I'll focus at this more from what does it mean to build a career. Yeah, and I'll try and connect the dots to see if I can give you some inputs as so many of you are just starting your journeys. Okay, with that, I'll pass it back and looking forward to the questions.
Thanks, Ashish, and thanks for your valuable time in coming to IIM Bangalore. It will be really great to know all the insights from you. So basically, I mean, since we have worked together, I know that you have a lot of support towards young talent, and I have seen you promoting within GE to a lot of people, and even a lot of leaders has went under your leadership. So I just have a question that, I mean, you know, we as an MBA graduate, we are very eager to know where we'll land after 5 or 10 years, right? So we just wanted to, you know, walk through your journey. So
okay,
can you just take us through your journey?
Sure. And all good stories start from the beginning. So I'll start. Maybe I grew up in the eastern part of India. My dad worked for SAIL. We are a Marwari family, which means pretty much everybody else in our family is in business of some sort, including Bangalore. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Chickpet, but that's where I was every summer. Yeah, it's a place to be, and it's still a place to behold. But my dad was an engineer, and that's how I grew. And in the place that I grew, your only option was you became an engineer or a doctor. So I was fortunate enough to get into IIT. Was even more fortunate to find a way to graduate from IIT. But I can say those were, in many ways, some of the happiest years. And so if you had to hear about one message, I think, which I'll say, which comes with some time of looking around and losing your way, finding your way, all of that, is that if you happiness and career progression are not really related. Yeah, and so if there's one advice I can give is to find something that makes you happy. finding something that makes you more money or running around or doing something more may not always be the right way, because look, I had a broken fan and a cycle that never worked, and those were the happiest years. So and so expectations change, everything changes, but look for happiness, look for gives you some satisfaction. And Jitin, it will apply to you as you look to start your journey here. A lot of other things will become secondary. So graduated from IIT, had the good fortune of, in fact, IIM Bangalore was the first IIM I got through to, and the interview itself was one of my most memorable interviews. But chose to work with Schlumberger more than anything, because it gave you the opportunity to see the world, lead operations much earlier than anybody else, and I was clear I wasn't going to do further engineering. I don't think I'm a good engineer by any means. So my choices were either in MBA or was very lucky to get into Schlumberger. I will say so I left Schlumberger to go to the US for my business school. I'd just gotten married. I was based out of Syria at that particular time. Joined Schlumberger, I joined McKinsey, left McKinsey relatively quickly within 2 years to do a startup. Left the first startup because it went under to do another one that went under. So after failing a couple of times, joined GE in the US with the expectation that I would join GE for a couple of years and then possibly look to start something of my own. But those 2 years became 15 years. Yep. And those 15 years brought me to India on a brief assignment. I did 3 separate roles with GE in India, each one of different complexities and magnitude. And at the end, my choice was to go back to the US or continue my work in India. And my heart was to stay back in India. I'd spent so much time learning, building a business in India. And Termax was just an amazing opportunity in every way to lead a publicly listed company, also a company going through energy transition. Yeah, and we'll talk through this day about energy transition quite a bit. So I'll hold on why I think that's a very important topic for all of us and why it excites me so much. But the opportunity to work at Termax, the culture, the values, little bit of the challenges as well, all of that attracted me to the company quite a bit. I'll go into 2 specific points in my career. Yeah, the first set of points was around the reasons why I joined McKinsey, and then why did I leave McKinsey. That was the time where I was chasing how quickly can I get somewhere and how quickly can I potentially get rich as well. Yeah, and that was during the first .com boom. I left McKinsey in 2001, or when I put in my resignation was the time where the NASDAQ was its highest during the first bubble. And I joined something because I thought it was backed by 2 amazing VCs. Did not really see whether my heart was in the role. Did I understand the business model? I just went because it felt like the sexy thing to do. Everybody was doing startups, and that's what I should be doing because I can get somewhere fast and make money. After those 4-year period where I went through 2 startups and I joined GE, by the time I joined GE again, I had none of the credence from IIT, McKinsey, all of that was gone. Yeah, the US was going through a bit of a cycle at that particular time. I joined GE as a salesperson, completely in an individual contributor. All your blue chips are gone. I was looking at, I didn't have my green card at that point in the US, just was looking for a job. So I thought I could survive 2-3 years, get a green card, and then I'll go do something else. So just that whole experience around just doing some things for some things that you don't believe in. Yep. So that's one point. And even in India, when I when I take a look at resumes, when I get where people have jumped from career to career, and I spent 2 years here, I did so amazingly well, but then I changed a job again and all that. I think in tech it can work where you are building a product or doing something like that. In other portions of the business, I don't believe in that model. Yeah, it feels like somebody who's jumping from role to role regularly is really not learning anything. Because by the time you learn something, you've spent a year, and before you can contribute, you've jumped on to something else. So that's one. The second thing I will talk about is to not take your careers very seriously, which means I had a bunch of missteps, but somehow at the end, it still works out. Yep. So careers are messy. Don't plan 10 years ahead at all. Plan for what are you learning, what are your capabilities, plan for 2-3 years ahead, and then just go with the flow. Absolutely go with the flow. Yeah, enjoy what you're doing, and think about what are you going to achieve in the next 3 months, 1 year, maximum 3 years. Beyond that, I think just go with the flow. Okay, so that's it, Bhushan. Very brief intro on my career, but we'll share more about it as we go through the questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashish, and those are really good insights on the, on the career part. So I think it is really valuable to all our colleagues who are right now, because right now what I have seen in the recent world, people are just behind, campuses and all that, interviews and all that. But I think it is very, so you have mentioned very important point that we should first focus on our capabilities, and there is time left to do all that. So thanks for that, Ashish. So since you have mentioned that you have worked also in the McKinsey, and also you have worked in the energy sector. So since you have seen both of this world, so how do you evolve through this, and how this transition has came, and what difference do you see in these both worlds? Because we see that management consulting is nowadays is the more effective thing where most of the MBA graduates goes.
So okay, yeah. Sure. So when I went for MBA, my 4.5 years before that were entirely spent in the oil field industry, which means the location before that was Syria, the location before that was, and I started my career in Egypt. In both cases, or even when for the brief time I was in Abu Dhabi or India, my typical loading, which means the time that I was offshore or on land, that was 25 days a month. Yeah, and then you would get a 1 or 2 month holiday in between, and that was completely spent traveling or being with friends or doing whatever. So when I actually went for my MBA, I thought I knew nothing at all. I thought I was a fish in the pond, and the pond was really, really big. And all I knew was, how do you find a bit of oil? And I said, who the hell is going to be interested in that? Yeah, so that's how you go. So for me, joining McKinsey was to explore and open the funnel, which is just give me a sense of lot of what is happening in the world, and just see different things that are coming your way. Yeah, and that was fantastic, having the opportunity. And I was clear relative to finance, relative to anything else. I thought McKinsey was just a consulting in general. Yeah, not the name itself was unbelievably fantastic. I will say that now that I'm 28, 29 years kind of since I've graduated from, no, not 20, yeah, 28, 29 years since I've graduated from IIT. Even now, the only job that I can do with my hands is the job that I did in the first 4.5 years. Yeah, that's the only job I can do with my hands. Everything else is just BS and words that I come up with. But if you can wake me up in the middle of the night and you ask me to go log a well, I think I can do that. Yeah, after that, I've learned a few things, done. Consulting teaches you a lot of how do you extrapolate, how do you go deep, you deal with numbers really, really well. How do you think through situations? Very much. But ultimately, you can only think through situations that you have experienced. Yeah, just like life. Yeah, you can only talk about love, failing, all of that only if you have gone through that. So in that sense, it took me many, many years to connect the dots But now I can connect the dots to the work that I did in the first few years in my career to the work that I do now. Yeah, I can generalize really well. I can talk about careers well because I know what it means to have gone through a service person's experience. I also know what it means from an energy point of view. I know the scale and size of oil field operations, energy. I know what they mean by polluting the environment, flaring gas, all of those things. Then you can start to connect the dots. And I can say that all through your first 15, 20 years of your career, all you are doing is connecting these dots. Yeah, and the picture starts to emerge well after you start to just connect these dots. So don't worry about the picture itself. The picture will emerge to you. Of course, here today's, I mean, many of you may want to do your own entrepreneurship, start something on your own. And even there, you should be very, very open to failure. Yeah, it's okay to fail first or once or twice, because as I'm saying, the picture will emerge over time. You may have a great idea, you start. It's only a couple of years down the road that you say, okay, no, I could have done those three or four things better. And you learn through this. It's in fact, I would encourage anyone and everyone highly to make mistakes, to go through that. Yes, specific to me. So I learned within McKinsey this amazing capability of looking at things from a 30,000 foot level. Be always having hypothesis in your mind, which is, I think this is something that I think is the potential solution. Yeah, so it's just like what you learn in statistics. Yeah, having a hypothesis, trying to disprove that hypothesis by going deep into that particular space and seeing if what you have in your mind will work out or not. And that methodology of flying high and going deep is something that you can apply just about anywhere. And in some ways, everything that people talk about, executive presence, all of that, is just this ability to pull things up, but yet retaining the idea and the knowledge on where do you want to go deep. And that's a skill that I learned. It's helped me tremendously. The last thing I'll say, what consulting teaches you is anytime somebody comes back in, or you have to think about three things. Yeah, if somebody says, look, why do you love your job? 3 reasons why you love your job. Yeah, be specific, be precise, be to the point, and go through it. I would say also, though, that that don't believe too much into anything an expert says, because many of these experts, including me, we all come from our personal points of view, our personal references, the dots that we have connected. Yeah, but our picture may be only part of picture. You may have seen a very different part, and which is why there's so many entrepreneurs who are successful, because they're open to looking at pictures in a very, very different way. So listen, hear, all of that, learn communication skills, all of that, but paint your own picture.
Thanks, Ashish. And I can very well relate that when we had a first meeting, and whatever all learnings which you had, I can really recognize that. I can really relate that now, that how these learnings has appeared.
Thanks.
So yeah, thanks for that. And also, Ashish, you have mentioned that you have worked in Syria, which is quite a harsh location, which we see in the oil and gas world. So I think it would be good to know about something about that role and how you have went through that. And does it impacted your career as well?
It didn't impact my career as such. What it taught me was that I think I feel like I'm now truly a global citizen in many ways. Yeah, first thing I think it teaches you not to look at people as belonging to a particular race or culture. All of that teaches you should be aware of, but humans are amazingly different. Yeah, each one different and unique in their own way, and putting people in a box is certainly something that should be avoided. And Syria was, for the most part, an amazing experience. The reason I left Syria was completely on the family side, because I'd just gotten married, and in 5 months that my wife was in Syria, I was gone to the field 20, 25 days a month. We would hardly see each other. It wasn't that easy for her in a new place with new language, everything else. but the people were amazingly friendly. Yeah, in Deir ez-Zor, which is where I stayed, I was telling Bhushan that that became the headquarters of ISIS eventually. But when I was there, it was in very, very nice place. And actually, I thought Syria and Egypt, I preferred to Saudi and UAE, which were a lot richer. But I felt like there was always a bit of a brown complex. In Syria, I never felt different from anybody else. As long as you didn't talk politics, people were amazingly friendly. And we would go drive 3-4 hours to go to a well site or something. You would stop for coffee and they would just keep giving you coffee, keep wanting to know stories from you. I had a thoroughly good time. And very close to Syria was a place called Palmyra, which is where some of the oldest Roman ruins are there, it's a very historical site. And I would pass that. And when ISIS came in, they bombed the whole place up. Yeah, so there's nothing remains of those ruins. Extremely, extremely sad. Go ahead, Bhushan. Next.
Okay, so I mean that would give us some kind of motivation that working at such such places would really even matter, and that experience could be really wonderful, even though it is it is harmful, but still. Okay, so one more thing, Ashish. So since we are talking about the energy sector here, so in GE in India, you have taken a GE oil and gas to another level, and you have that created history behind you. So what are your key learnings which you have seen in India taking that GE oil and gas business towards the next level? Because I remember being worked with you, there were some major projects we have won and all that. So, but I was not part of it. So I think you can explain us more about that.
Sure, I'll dabble a bit in and give you some sort of perspective as well then. I came to India in 2011 from the US on what was a 2-year assignment. And I was sent by GE because GE at that point was going through an experiment where John Flannery, who ended up becoming the chairman of GE after Jeff Immelt, came to India with the idea of how do you make GE in India a completely local business. Yeah, which is, and so GE had like 10 divisions, and we had one division, which was its automation business, which I think Umesh may know and understand based on the balance of plant work that he does. It's basically a lot of equipment and solutions that go in automating a plant. Yeah, any industrial plant has got big pieces of equipment, which are like your big organs, your heart, your liver, your all of that. But then you need automation, which is your nerves, your brain cells, everything to connect that. Yeah, so then it becomes an organism as a plant as such. So GE had a lot of equipment, which was its automation business. Most of it came from factories outside, gets sold in India. So India had a sales team and a very small services team. But now the challenge was, how do you make it a local business? So I had come in to make that into a local business. That was one of my best experiences in my career. Yeah, because it taught me how do you take a small business, but more important than growth was to create this capability that the business could become fundamentally a local business. Yeah, so in the first 3 months, I probably did 150 interviews. I was doing 1 to 2 interviews every day because the team that I had was a sales team and a small services team. We had to add all the rest of the capability, a much stronger services capability, a channel team, engineering capability, quotation capability, some amount of manufacturing capability. All of that we had to set up. Yeah, so that whole experience was really, really amazing. It also gave me the opportunity to travel through India, meet, because if you have to set up channel network in Odisha as such, we have no idea what that channel space capability out there looks like. So traveling through the country, traveling through portions of Northeast, all of that. So through that experience, I discovered India. I also discovered my business. How do plants in say Jharkhand, which is where a big steel and coal plants are. How do they get serviced? All of that. So it gave me good exposure into, and then building the team gave you an experience to build a lot of new people into the mix, new relationships, new friendships. And some of those stayed to be the best friendships that we had, because I managed through that experience to get people from UAE, Singapore to come back into India, JFWTC, which in Bangalore is a big engineering center. A couple of our senior most leaders came from there. So just setting that team, building that team, motivating that team was for me an amazing experience, because it was a mini startup for me, and I thoroughly, and GE at that point, because it was building a local India business, gave you a lot of freedom. So you had pricing decisions, business decisions, investment was, you made a case for investment, you got that very, very quickly. So then in 2014, I thought I would be going back to the US, but my automation business got merged with the larger GE oil and gas business. And I was asked to lead that business. So that was a big promotion for me, specifically because while the oil and gas business was not doing as well, but the potential for there was much, much bigger, because like I said, we were building the nerves and the valves and things like that. The big organs in many ways were with GE oil and gas, where you could do big turbines, big pumps, lot of different kinds of things that were really, really big. So then when I got that larger role, my first thing was, how do you connect it and make the role meaningful to the people that were in your team? Yeah, so the idea was, and that team was used to losing a lot. Yeah, we would lose a lot to Indian companies like BHEL. We would lose a lot to Siemens, lot of different ways. Yeah, and it was a team which kind of, in a way, I thought was a little tired almost. So my first thing was, how do I get them to rally around, and how do I paint a picture which was bigger and a canvas that was bigger than what you were doing on a daily basis? So we came up with a phrase which ultimately actually got chosen at the larger level as well, which was moving energy forward for India. And that became a catchphrase that we talked a lot about, that what you were doing was not just building a pump or quoting a meter or anything. You were moving energy forward in India, which means fertilizer plants that were in India that were ultimately responsible for providing fertilizer, providing moving agriculture. India was importing 50% of its fertilizers at that point. So if you could do and build up solutions to improve efficiency of fertilizers, help put in state-of-the-art equipment for the new fertilizer plants you were moving energy forward for India. Yeah, India was always importing close to 90% of its energy from outside of India, from an oil and gas perspective. And deep water in India was a big unexplored area. So how do you get the team? And the projects in India would take ages in time. So yeah, the big deep water project that we started working on in 2014 did not become real until 2017 first, and then 2018 was where we had a big success. But getting the people to rally around moving energy forward became a catchphrase, because it was okay if it would take 2 years, but by the success you would achieve by doing that would move energy in India forward. So that became a key rallying cry, for at least for me personally, because more than telling the team what to do, I had to be clear on what was driving me as an individual and as a person. So that meant a lot for me, and that drove me easily for the next 3-4 years. And I'll tell you then what changed for me afterwards. But and we had some tremendous successes. We had successes where and India was never perfect. Yeah, anything that you plan to happen in 3 months sometimes would take more than 2 years. We talked about a fertilizer wave in 2015. That wave did not happen until end of 2016, beginning of 2017. But when it happened, we had like $300 million worth of orders just in fertilizers. We had in deep water we had some of our biggest successes where GE won a single big order when we were Baker Hughes at that time, which was $600 million. And then with Kane, we won some big stuff. So that was really, really game-changing, very satisfying as well. And we took what was a business that was relatively small, and we, in 2018, we got almost $1 billion worth of orders that year, which was very, very satisfying, but still not complete. Yeah. And as we go down the journey, I'll say what did not work and why I think it was only a half journey for me, as we talk about the rest. Yeah, I've spoken enough, so I will take a break here and go to the next question.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashish. And I still remember that day when I came to office, I have seen hoardings and all, and that we have won that project. It was really excited.
Yeah, just talking about successes, bringing people together, celebrating successes, doing awards. Those are all simple things that as leaders we can do a lot to motivate the team. Yeah.
True. Yes. Ankita.
So yeah, thank you, Ashish, for the great insight on your career journey. That's really an inspiration for us. And being part of GE myself, I can really echo with a few of the statements that you made, like the cherish and the learnings from building a team and the freedom that GE provides in the work culture. Also, how it accommodates the fail fast and move ahead, the way we work there. So moving towards a bit on the power sector area and the recent COVID times, which has adversely impacted all of us, how Thermax has evolved during this tough time of the last 2 years, and what were your key learnings during this phase?
Okay, good question. Thanks, Ankita. So I think that's a good segue into, I think we finished at the kind of a high at GE. After that came a trough as well. I'll talk about the trough and I'll connect it to work that we have at Termax. Yeah. So 2018, GE chose to take its oil and gas business and merge it with Baker Hughes and spin it out as a separate company. Which means that in 2018 end and 2019 beginning, I was fortunate enough to get the larger role of at Baker Hughes for India and South Asia, which was quite good. But there were two things that changed during that process for me. First was that I did not believe oil and gas had a long future. Yeah, and the reason for that is I think climate change is real, and not just now. I've been it's something that that has been with me from once I started to become smarter on the topic, reading about it. It was clear, and it's important, and it's a personal driver for me that climate change is real, and so I did not see that and I was in my late 40s then, that I could see myself building the next 15 years of my career, and which I thought would be the best portion of my career in oil and gas. Yep. And because it just, as I said, yeah, we all look for motivation in some way or another. And I look for motivation for what brings me to work every day. And I did not see that as a drive, personally speaking. Second, when GE started to go through a difficult time, and then when Baker Hughes was a true and true oil company, which meant that India, because India is a much smaller portion of oil and gas, we went back from being like 7-8% of global revenues in the year before to a small 1 to 2% overall. And India did not become as important anymore, which means some of those things that I talked about, freedom to operate, do all of that, was suddenly became, you felt like those strings were being pulled by somebody else. Yeah. And 2019, I started to interview out. And I'll connect it to kind of how do you build a career? How do you network? How do you do a lot of things that go into building a career? Because a career is just not coming to work every day. There is a lot of things that you have to take care all around, which also I'll refer to. So both of those two things, yeah, and even on some of these big projects that we won, especially the Kane one, which ultimately was not successful. Yeah? It was as GE, as Baker Hughes, we lost money on that project, and it's something that has rankled me forever. It gave me sleepless nights at times. But simultaneously, it felt like the freedom to operate, change things, get the right people. I had zero freedom in terms of making a difference truly. So as a leader, when you come and you can't make that difference, and the difference is fundamentally from being a prime minister and being a president, plain and simple. I hated the idea of being a president. Yeah, which is talking about things that felt like it wasn't something that I was really, really enjoying. And then more importantly, the president bit, I thought, okay, if I stuck it out for another 2-3 years, maybe I would find a better role or a different role within. But what did not work for me was the idea of working in oil and gas for the next 15 years. So I started interviewing, and when I started interviewing, my choice was to go back to the US or be in India. And by that time, I'd been in India for nearly 9 years. And so all my connects, everything was in India. And I love the energy of India. I absolutely love how hard people work, how we try to make a difference in so many different ways. And so then there were many Indian companies that just didn't work for me from an ethics point of view, from a culture point of view. Thermax checked all the boxes. It was the right size. It was publicly listed. It was an amazing ability to make a change. The culture was fantastic. It's a company that was known for its reputation, and at least so far in the last year and a half, what I've seen, completely squeaky clean. Yeah, we don't pay even 50 rupees for an order or anything at all. But that by itself was a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. The two big things that attracted me to Termax, first was the ability to make a difference. Yet the company had not grown in many, many years. It was considered to be a very solid engineering company, a big driver in India's infrastructure story, like almost like a mini L&T, but was an amazing name. When I went to Reliance, many other places, Thermax from an engineering point was thought about to be fantastic. But it was a company that was in the midst of energy transition, which means in a world where 80% of your energy comes from fossil fuels, and you are shifting to a world where 80% of your energy will come from not fossil fuels. How do you take a company through that transition? Fascinates me as a leader, because it is not, startups have a difficult problem, but a relatively simple one as well, because you just have one product and you put everything behind that product. Yeah, and you read why bigger companies are not able to make the change. Yeah, why was Ford not able to come up with what Tesla was able to come up with? All of those problems that happen, in a way, I have the opportunity to say, have I learned from all of that? Have I learned from mistakes we made at GE, what I saw, which was an amazing company. GE trained you on everything Ankita talks about, on failing fast, all that. Yet when difficult times come, you tend to narrow down on businesses that you think you can make money in. But those businesses that you can make money in today, which for GE was its gas turbines business, all of that, are businesses that in the next 10 years are going to go down. You know that. So I have this opportunity within Termax to work through energy transition, which means how do you build startups within Termax that are funded from those companies that are making money? And how do you balance the two? Yeah, how do you balance energy availability with energy sustainability? Yeah, because you've got one portion of business, a big portion of a business is around cleaning air in coal plants. Yeah, so you are amazing in cleaning air. So anytime you need to take out SOx, NOx, Thermax equipment comes into play. So you have choice. Do you continue to do that or not? You say, yeah, the Western companies will say, no, anything in coal is dirty. Doesn't matter what you do. India, you can't do that. Yeah, 70% of your energy comes from coal, more than 70%. You can't come and say to a girl who has no electricity at home that tomorrow you can't have electricity because we want to be sustainable. So you have to operate it. And what you focus on is making that coal, that air that comes out of that plant as clean as possible. But in the next 10 to 15 years, all those coal plants will likely get shut down, which means even this job that you have of cleaning the air over the next 15 years will go to zero. So literally you draw a line that says from here to there is going to zero. How do you start to, accelerate from that point on? How do you start to bring everything else that grows? So my challenge is the new portions of Termax that we have should become 30% of Termax within 5 years. Yeah, so that's the level of urgency I'm trying to create within the company. It's fascinating. How do you take the team together? GE gave me the opportunity to work in India with a population that was about 1,000 odd people. At Thermax, I have that at a population of 6,000 plus people. Yeah, and you have to connect it to stock market expectations, all of that. So that is what got me to Thermax. It fascinates me. I've loved the journey every day. Very easy to get out of bed. Doesn't matter COVID or not, getting out of bed and getting to work has been extremely easy. And ultimately, if there's a single barometer that you want to know on whether you enjoy your work or not, it's whether how easily you sleep and how easily when you wake up, how fresh you are to go get on with the day. Simple. Those are the simplest barometers that you can use through everything. Yeah. And that's what Thermax been for me. Joining through COVID was challenging. I did not plan on it. My goal was to leave leave Baker in end of February, take a couple of months off, travel. I love traveling. I love just being out there. Yeah, being with nature, doing stuff, meeting friends, playing a bit of golf as well, just completely decompressing for a couple of months and joining this. I did that for about 2 weeks in March. And then third week, COVID struck. And then Thermax was going through its complete change of business plan because they had one business plan and then COVID happened. And they said, look, you will be putting that new plan into action. Would you want to join early? So instead of joining May 1st, I joined April 7th because I was just sitting at home doing nothing. And so said, might as well understand, use that time to build. So Thermax, the culture was very, very strong. I'll rush now because I've been speaking for very long. The two things I will say. One thing that I've learned is in all new roles, and even within GE, even though I stayed there for 15 years, I did 5 very distinct roles. Yeah, so it feels like I had a lot of transition points. One thing that I've learned, and especially as you get into leadership roles, there's always a pressure to make changes. But it is very important to not rush into things. Yeah. So practically the first year, all I was doing was just learning, talking, meeting people, understanding the business, trying to learn the business from the other person's point of view. So hearing a lot, doing a lot of reviews, and during COVID times, you had to, yeah, because you were running. One thing you will learn through your career is that when you're going through points of crisis, like if there's a fire, then you can't think about where will I be 3 years from now? What will my business be like? You don't even worry about insurance and what is the next house I will build. Your only concern is putting the fire off. But if as a business, you're constantly going from one fire to another, then you have a team which is very good at handling crisis, but nothing else. Yeah, then you don't see round corners, you miss out on everything about building a business. So, but for the first few months in the new career, at Thermax, we were just in crisis mode. But being in crisis modes helps you tremendously because it gets you to okay, you need to put in a COVID. How do you start your factories? Okay, you need to put COVID protocols. So just running the rigor of putting COVID protocols gets you to understand how your factories work, what is your IT capability, gets you to meet certain operating leaders and see how they are going, what are their capabilities, how do they start up, what is their say-do ratio, which is they said we will have all this done by this time and by this time production will start. Were they able to deliver that or not? How aggressive are they? So it teaches you a lot crisis in terms of about your teams. So that whole experience helped me tremendously. There's a book which is called The First 90 Days, which I'll recommend if you guys start a new job, new role. Just read that on how do you think about your first 90 days. So for me, it was the first 6 months, first year almost. I made very few changes, no organization changes, nothing at all. But that 1 to 2 year period is a very important one. And so now it feels like we are just changing everything in a way. And which is important because a new team, every time a new leader comes, the team is also going through a bit of uncertainty. Yeah? They say, ab ye kya karega, pata nahi, pagal hai, nahi hai. All of those things happen. It's a good thing. You want to use that time that you have where people don't know you very well, because at that time, they're very open to accepting new ideas also. Because they don't know how this guy reacts. What is he going to do? Can I do this or not? They will also see those are the times where you build trust with your team as well, because you're going through the transition. It's like going down the road, he's the leader, bol raha hai, we have to go down this road. What choice do we have? Let's follow him. But what is a leader like during that journey is what you come to. But it's important to start walking that path, because the moment a team gets too comfortable, then change becomes difficult. Yeah, you want to make sure that you don't ever get comfortable as an individual, and you never let your team get too comfortable as well. Actually, that's one thing GE taught me a lot on, which I've learned. Yeah, moving teams around, being open, not always looking what's not working. How do you make a difference? Just that attitude constantly is a very good attitude you have. Sorry, a long answer, Ankita, to your simple question, but hopefully it was of some use.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. Definitely, it was a wonderful, wonderful insight. And the two important leadership takeaways, and that I also personally cherish, is having the desire to drive a change for something specific and the trust. So I have personally observed, like during my internship days with GE, how you used to come to our desk and really make us think to view the product from the customer's perspective, and how we can change, how to bring about that specific desire to do a change, be it in a small way, to the customer's life. So I still cherish that learning from you, and really thank you for that. So you have touched two important points now regarding climate change and sustainability. And coming myself from the gas power division, what I see is there is an urgent global priority to decarbonize the human life now. So power business sector as one of the key partners in achieving sustainability. What are your thoughts on the ecosystem restoration and the recent technology disruptions in this area?
Okay. So there's a old Chinese proverb which is supposed to be it's a pessimistic proverb. Yeah, it's not supposed to be a good thing. It says, "May you live in interesting times." Yep, and in my living career, which is very short in my own view, but possibly very long in your view, I will say that I have not been through a portion which is as interesting as what we are going through currently. Energy transition and climate change is a problem, not for companies. It is a problem for the entire planet. It's humanity's biggest problem right now, and in many ways a problem much bigger than COVID that we are going through. COVID is the fire that's in the house right now. Climate change is the is that you're going to get off the cliff. You're going to jump off the cliff very soon unless you find a way to turn the car. Yeah, that's it. It's as plain and simple as that. The good thing about this, may you live in interesting times, is that all of this at its heart is going to be solved by things that tools and technologies and things that you are learning, which is how does technology come to bear? How does finance come to bear? How does digital come to bear? Yeah, how do you collaboration comes to bear in unprecedented ways to make that happen? And those are the skills in many, many ways that you are learning at your MBA program. Yeah, it doesn't matter which program, where are you, which stage of the MBA program, but that's what you're learning. So in that sense, it's a fascinating time. Yeah, first I'll talk about the uncertainty of it all. How this whole energy transition will happen. Complete amount of uncertainty. Let me take one example. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about a hydrogen economy. Everybody that in the energy space is talking about hydrogen economy. In the Western world, in Europe, for example, when Europe came out of the whole COVID thing, the first wave, and the governments came in with a massive subsidy effectively to jumpstart the industry and the economy. All of those subsidies, majority of those subsidies to industries went in areas of climate change. Yeah, and it's running some of the biggest experiments on hydrogen, looking to replace natural gas with hydrogen, green, and the hydrogen itself is produced from green electricity, which by itself is provided through renewables. Yep. So how will this whole hydrogen economy evolve? Will it evolve or not? What portions of the economy will it affect? What will it do? What will it not do? Complete amount of uncertainty, chaos, complete chaos. Second, the number of new technologies that are coming in is absolutely mind-boggling. Solar itself is going through this semiconductor. Anybody, yeah, you knew semiconductor following the Moore's law, which is every 6 months, the capability of this will go 2x, the price will go half. Yeah, that was the Moore's law that semiconductors were running on. Solar, it's not 6 months, it's maybe 2 years, but there is dramatic changes in technology that are coming in, new stuff that is coming in. Yeah, there is perovskites, there is tandem technology. Then you come into battery. Massive revolutions going on in battery technology. Lithium ion, different kinds, sodium nitrate, solid fuels, all kinds of new battery technologies. Fuel cells coming in, whole different kinds of fuel cells, reformers, carbon capture, electrolyzers, syngas to chemicals, crude to chemicals, take away plastics, a whole host. Like you could run up with 40 new technologies coming in to replace what used to be a thermal power plant, hydroelectricity, gas turbine based stuff. So 5 things or 10 things that ran 300 years of industrial revolution in 10 years are going to get replaced, or 20 years if you could take solar into play, solar and wind, by 20 plus new technologies, all of which are on their own crazy development curve. And looking that in the next 20 years, if you were working through 80% fossil fuel and 20% renewable, in the next 20 years, that will flip, which means it will be 80% renewable, 20% fossil fuel. So completely crazy how this whole energy sector is going to flip. And all companies that are in energy will have to think about, like the car industry is coming and you are making buggies. Yep. So figure out what you're going to do differently, because your business model in the next 20 years is going to be history. But it's fascinating, because if you're willing to change fast, think differently, the amount of new things that are in front are mind-bogglingly amazing as well. Thanks, Ankita.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashish. Working in the power sector, I could relate with a lot of things what you were mentioning. And recently, there are so much disruption and the technology changes that is happening in this sector. So that brings me to the next question. Like, as we see, there is a lot of industry dynamics that are changing, and there is a lot of disruption. How do you plan to evolve Termax over the coming years?
So I think I've answered that already in many, many ways. So I think in the interest of time, I'll just summarize what I've already spoken about. And by the way, I think as you guys were, and as I was speaking, Bill Gates in early 90s had said, by the way, Bill Gates has a book on how to tackle climate change, which is very, very good. Yeah, if you want to do anything in the energy sector, that's a very good book to read, because it summarizes a lot in that one book. But he, in the early 1990s, had talked about that change. We always overestimate change in the short run, and he was saying 6 months to a year, and we underestimate change in the long run, which is 5 to 10 years. Yeah, so he says, you always overestimate how much things will change in the 6 months, and he was talking about this in the context that he thought someday people will have an address, like an email address, just the way they have their formal addresses. Yeah, and he was saying in 20 to 25 years he thinks that will happen. But by the time you had reached the mid 90s and early and end 90s, all of our business cards had our email addresses already there. Yeah, so it happened a lot faster than you think. But if you think something happens, so anyway, I'll go back to what am I looking to change at Termax? Exactly that. Yeah, getting this company to be a champion in energy transition, getting the company to not think like an engineering equipment-based company, but more of a clean air, clean water, clean energy company. Yeah, Termax prides itself on the more the complexity, I can engineer something amazingly. But that's not the approach at all, because the future is not big, massive plans. The future is more new products, productized, small capability. Not that the engineering is not complex, but just the scale and size will be very, very different. So thinking of the company more as a clean air, clean water, clean energy company, that I think is the biggest transition that I'm looking to achieve. As part of that, so one of the big things that I've done as part of my biggest transition is that I've created a new energy vertical. I've taken one of our senior most leaders who was running a business that was 2,000 crores, and his current business is just 200 crores. Everything else is a white page. And I'm giving him the challenge that 30% of what Termax is 5 years from now has to come from that business, which means, and I'm giving him complete freedom to do partnerships, bring in, so in that business, in one particular case where we are accelerating a solar model, we are bringing in a senior leader from the outside, and we can't pay that person, that person's previous salary was 3 crores, which is higher than any salary that other than mine that Termax has. But what we are going to do for him is giving him a much lower salary, but giving him an equity stake in that small company and challenging him that within 5 years, take it public. All new kinds of business models, how do you do, giving him freedom to do, and that is not just there. In many other parts of the business, one bad thing that Termax had, which I'll talk about very, very quickly, that growth in a company is like oxygen. When you stop growing in a company, it is the first sign that the death part of that company is starting. And Termax did not grow for good 5 years. Not just Termax, India's infrastructure industry has not grown for 5 years, which means that the entire industry needs a refresh on how do you do. And what happens is when you don't grow is that you get heavier on the top, which means the younger people feel like they can't build a career out there. So they start to leave. The newer people with newer ideas start to leave, which does not mean that the people at the top are not good people. They're very good, hardworking people. but just that importance and the aggressiveness and wanting to change goes away. So you want to shake that system up, create that place that where the performance driven culture, how do you bring it? Yet, how do you take people along? And especially doing it in a time like COVID, where people are really, you don't want to kick someone out of a job during COVID. Yes. So how do you achieve all of that has taken a lot of my time, but just thinking about the people part, thinking about where do we want to go as a company, those two things have taken the most amount of time. And the leadership that we have, the seniority that we have, I've done as much of my time as I possible in delegating stuff on the base business, like running a big EPC project. I will never be as good as what my team is. And I'm completely open to knowing that, understanding that. I ask them questions around cash collections, how the project execution is going, but I don't go and tell them, go bid on this project or not bid on this project. I give them margins that you can't go below a certain margin, but how to price a project, all of that. I give them complete freedom because I know that's the bread and butter of Termax. They can do that better than I can. But there are a lot of other parts of Termax that have to change. And I give a lot more of my time to those parts. As a leader, I can't influence this quarter, but I can influence the quarter which is coming 3 quarters from now. And my eye has to be on that quarter which is coming 3 quarters from now.
Yeah,
Thanks, Umesh.
As Termax is undergoing a change and you're looking forward for the various initiatives for the future. So can you throw some light on the digital transformation activities and the various digital initiatives that are adopted by Termax?
Sure, Umesh. It has to be at the heart of it. And it's something, if I had to give, so the messages that I gave today, yeah, first, I think careers are messy. Don't think too far ahead. Think short. Be completely open. And I promise you, it will all work out at the end. Yeah. If anything, if it is you don't take risks, is when it will not work out. Yep. So that is my one message. My second message, I've got 2 or 3, which I always tell the team, but one of the messages is around digital. Doesn't matter what you do, which industry you are in, what function you are in, learn digital. And learn digital does not mean that you learn programming. Learn how digital will affect your space, your industry, your portion of the puzzle. Very, very important. Yeah, anything. If you're doing finance, like cred at the heart of it is a digital model. You're taking something which the credit card companies have been doing for 50 years or 30 years in India. He has come in and taken a cream of that particular portion and has come in and has found a completely different way to engage with those people. And so the credit card companies that were used to that 18% interest charge, suddenly all of that is going to somebody else who has come completely disaggregated the model. Uber at the heart of it is a Meru cab is also doing digital, which means you are saying, you know, my ERP is coming in at the back end and my payment systems and all. Oh, yeah, I've implemented now. I can take credit cards from my customers. So that's digital. Here comes an Uber that brings digital to completely rethink how it's engaging with its entire customer base. You're completely gone. And so the Merus of the world are 2 steps behind having to catch up, where a Uber comes in, thinks about this space completely different from a digital point of view. So in Termax, let me talk about, so there is one, which is how do you make the company more digital overall? But then how am I bringing digital to rethink business entirely? So that we are doing in 2 ways. One, Termax has got 50,000 plus installations across India. Boilers, chillers, water systems, all variety of different. You will be amazed that more than 50% of these customers, we have no idea and no connect with them. How do they service our products? Who goes and services? Nothing at all. So our biggest initiative is to create like an urban clap for industrial. which means and this is not the Reliances of the world, the IOCLs of the world, the sales of the world. There are a million companies that go up and show up. The Schneiders, the Honeywells, they all go with big digital solutions. For them, all their equipment is cutting. But where Thermax connects in textile industry, plywood industry, variety of different hospitality and hospitals and food, pharma, chemicals, variety, which is the middle segment of India, which nobody touches in a way. We are saying, can we get their experience to go digital in the way their plants are addressed, and creating like an urban club where the customers have a very easy way to reach out. They have a very easy way to tell them when their water filtration system needs to be replaced or when the boiler needs to be replaced. All of those things, which in some ways, Kent RO will do it for you at home. You will be amazed that nobody does it on the industrial side. So that's one example by which we are bringing digital in to completely redo how we do services, and thinking then if we do it well, we can do it not just for our products, we can do it for third-party products, our competitor products, bringing just this urban clap for industrial way of thinking as a model for the middle and the bottom of the industrial pyramid in India. So that's one example. I've got 2 or 3 others, but in the interest of time, Umesh, I hope I've addressed that. Yeah, I think we've got another 25 minutes and a lot of questions coming in from what I can see. Yeah. I hope I gave you an idea at least on how digital can connect. There are a lot of other such ideas. Yeah, but how do you transform from digital? You should think about in whichever business you are in, Jitin, yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. Now I will ask Jitin to walk us through the question and answer session.
Yeah, thank you, Umesh, and thank you, Ashish, for spending Sunday morning with us and taking the time to sort of answer all of our questions. That are
my pleasure. Yeah, I like hearing my own voice, so it's you guys.
Yeah, so I think you said a lot of. I think especially the part you were talking about how that things will work out and you don't need to have a long-term plan. That resonated with me because I think about 10 years back and having a plan. That plan hasn't worked out, but all these opportunities keep presenting themselves, and it's up to you to decide whether to take it up or not. But yeah, we have a lot of questions that have come in, so we'll get to that. So guys, if you want to ask Ashish a question, you can also raise your hand. We can unmute you to ask. But to start with, we'll start with a question from a Termax alum, Rajesh Srinivasan. He has asked that once you took over this job as the CEO at Termax, what are some of the mindset shifts that you did at the company? Are there major?
I think I've answered that already. Very, very quickly speaking, first few months, almost 6 to 9 months, very little, actually very little. But I was using that time to continuously have hypotheses in my minds. Yeah, and then testing those hypotheses, asking questions, seeing what will work. Now we are going and getting into the phase of massive change across the organization. The 2 or 3 big, and by the way, Termax is a place where people have built their entire careers. Yeah, it's also a place where salaries are typically much lower than other industries. So it's not like you can come and say, I'll fire 30% of the company. Yeah, I promise you the other 50% will also leave. You'll have nothing left. Yeah, and in the company. So you have to manage this with kid gloves in a way, but still managing it constantly. So the 2 or 3 big changes that I already talked about. First was getting the urgency for change. Yeah, talking about climate change, talking about building this clean air, clean water, clean energy company, the urgency around it, getting everybody to start thinking about it, thinking about how the work they did connects with that. Yeah, so starting to do that, very, very important. Second, getting performance culture, the whole idea of performance culture. So we are completely changing how incentives work, bringing in a lot of different models, evaluation of employee mechanisms, some parts that I thought worked very well at GE, bringing those other parts that are belief of all of us, bringing some. So we are completely changing the performance culture of that. The third thing was that it had a culture of command and control within Termax. I'm starting to communicate just a lot more about what we are seeing, what we should be doing, all of that, and looking at that as the way to also bring in the capability of of failing. Yeah, talking a lot about lead and create. That as Termax, we need to do a lot of lead and create, which means leading with in new ideas, being okay to fail, and creating stuff, which is you starting to create stuff which is new. It's okay, not everything that you create will become a mansion, but getting that attitude in a way. Through all of that, continuing to talk about the amazing history that Thermax has. Yes, so Thermax is a 50-year-old company. It started in trying to do things for the first time and being successful at that. So when we are talking about doing new things, I'm trying to build a connect to that was the origin of Thermax. Yeah, that is Thermax's origin story. So getting that superpower in a sense where you were open to getting into new businesses, trying new things back as your mojo in a way. So those are some of the things. Yeah.
So I wanted to sort of go back to something you said earlier, which is you're talking about moving energy forward and climate change being a big driver in doing what you do. So if you look at the last a few months or even the last year, there's a lot of interest in the EV industry and a lot of investment coming in as well. So how do you think that is going to sort of change or shape the energy sector in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think EV is just one of the technologies which will affect things. Yeah, and EV will affect mobility in a very, very big way. It is very easily the most eye-catching, but EV is only where it's possibly the single biggest portion. It's, I think, about 30% of energy, which is mobility driven. Even in EV, even there, I think the long distance transportation will most likely go fuel cell and not EV. Yeah, it will go hydrogen and fuel cell and not EV. Short distance transportation will go EV. I completely believe in it. My focus, largely because that's where Thermax comes from. Also, you have to pick and choose your bets. The challenge in the automotive industry is that the ecosystem bets, you can't come up with a battery solution of your own, because if the car industry is going on a different platform, you can be left completely behind, even if you have a great battery story. Doesn't matter. So my focus is on the other 70% of energy, which is also getting transformed just as much as EV is transforming short-term mobility. Yep, so that's where my focus is. I completely believe it will happen. And just like I was saying, sometimes in the short run, you say, India has been talking about EV for 2 years, nothing happens. It is that short-term change. Don't get seduced by that. The long-term change will surely be there, and it will be as fast as you believe. Sometimes it takes an Ola who comes in and says, I will build the whole damn ecosystem. Yeah, I don't care. I just like Tesla did, that I'll build my own scooter, my own battery, and here's a price of 90,000, go deal with it. That forces everybody else to go make the change. That change will surely happen.
Right.
On the industrial side, that similar change is happening. And I talked about some of those drivers previously.
Yeah. So I think this is a great segue into the next question, because Mahalingam from the PGPM first year batch had a question around what are the key factors you look for when you look at a business and find its potential? So when you're evaluating new business opportunities, what is your decision matrix like?
Okay, I'm by nature an optimist, and by a nature, different people have different strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, some people would, and by the way, there's nothing good or bad. Yeah, it's just who you are as humans. I tend to look more at what is changing, and that drives me more than incrementally improving what is good. Yeah, and so they're different drivers. So what I look for in a business always, first, I think, as I said, yeah, it should align with the values that you have as an individual, which you may or may not from a culture point of view, all of those things, if you were looking to joining that business or acquiring that business or whatever. Then second, I think the heart would completely go in, because I think for me, it is important that whatever I look at there is a resonance with the heart. Yeah, you think with your mind, but you connect with the heart, which is, do you see something out there that drives you as an individual that you think you can connect? with. Yeah, very, very important. And the third is that you see opportunity for change. Yeah, you see that, okay, these are 2 or 3 things that you believe can be changed in the business that will make it better. Yeah, so the Termax one is a good example. The culture bit was a good fit. The heart, the thing around the space, energy, all of that connected with my heart. And third, for me, it was Thermax had not grown, energy transition was coming. And that to me felt like I went in saying to myself that if that's the last role I do, I would be completely happy. Yep. So that's the attitude that I went in.
Right. The next question that we have is also around vision from Srinath. What is your advice to emerging leaders on how to develop a vision for oneself and the company?
Okay. Look, I think vision for oneself, maybe I wasn't, as I said, the vision that I had built for myself, or maybe I did not have as much confidence in the younger me as I possibly should have. Because the vision that I built was more around material things, which even 5-7 years down the road proved to be horribly insufficient. The vision should have been more broader and more deeper in a way. So don't take whatever I did as gospel in any way. But I think I shared what in Thermax when I came in, my vision was a lot simpler. Yeah, which was how do I help this company become a champion in energy transition? And also, how do I go through this with the attitude that that if this is the last role that I have, it's something that I've given my best on. That's it. Those were the only things that I built a vision for. Yeah, which gave a personal commitment to the role, and then 2, kind of what I wanted to align the company around. Plain and simple. That's it. So there were no 3 years. There were no like, I need to make so much money. I need to build revenue of so much. There was none of that in the vision. For a company itself, I believe very strongly in that whole process around purpose, vision, mission, and goals. Yeah, and the purpose of the company is extremely important, because if you align with that purpose, you will see that your communication, your clarity of thought becomes much, much easier. So you should spend time doing that. Yeah, when you come into new roles, even new teams, whatever it is, yeah, find what will rally your team around. And it may not be something that is visible straight from the beginning. And by the way, even for Termax, I could do that because my interview process with Termax was 9 months. First time I met them was May of 2019, end of April 2019. And when I got the offer was January of 2020. Yeah, so it was a 10-month affair where I came to know of the company a lot. They came to know. So it doesn't mean that whatever this vision is, you will know instantly. It's perfectly okay to just talk, build, think. But it's very, very important after that to be able to verbalize it. And verbalizing should be one line. Yeah, one line. Yeah. That's it. That's it. It should be easy for everyone in the company to relate to that. But then you need to be able to come back and put that into to vision and your goals. And the goal should be specific. In fact, Bhushan would know I used to play around when I was at GE with top 10 goals. Yep. So, and there would be posters of top 10 goals, which is what we want to do for the year as a whole as a company. And I promise you, I don't think there's a single year where we achieve more than 7 of those goals. But the idea was to go for something that was lofty, go for something that would take the whole team forward. That was something that if you achieved even part of it, you said, wow, I did something new and different this year. But the goals by themselves were of no use if you can't connect it to a larger purpose. And find that larger purpose. Very important.
Right. We have a hand raised. Kamesh, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Go ahead, Kamesh.
I think Kamesh is on mute.
Okay. Kamesh, if you can hear us, you can go ahead. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question. Just put it in the comments.
I've had a lot of questions. I think I promised initially I'll talk about the career bit as well. So can I just very quickly share one or two more insights that possibly didn't come up as much? Yeah. So look, I talked about the careers messy bit. I talked about learning digital. Along with learning digital, learn finance. Irrespective of what you do, how you make money will come back, and any business plan that you have, any idea that you have, ultimately the purse strings are controlled by the person from finance. So learn finance very, very well. Yeah, which hopefully you're doing in as MBAs from IIM Bangalore, but keep that. Third, I would say become an expert, learn something very, very well. Yeah, be really, really good at something. Doesn't matter. It could be function, could be industry, could be a small portion, could be an overlay between digital and a particular aspect, whatever it is. But be really, really good. And someone, you can never be the best at anything, but or maybe you can, but try to be the best, like amazing at that one thing. And not in the next 3 years, but in the next 15 years, be that. And if you can, of course, combine what you are really good at with what you love, then you're set for life. But really look to do that. Don't jump from roles to roles just because you're getting a promotion. Do it because you're learning something different, and focus at becoming really good at something. Yeah, so that's one example one thing that I would say. Fourth, I would say network a lot. And network not for the reason that, boss, that's where I'll get my next job. Almost everything you will do in life will be around looking around corners, looking around things that are coming from beyond. And those signals you get not from your same circle you interact with on a daily basis. Those signals you get from your network. Yeah, and a network could be social, could be work related, could be anything. It applies to everyone. If you feel like every Saturday and Sunday you're meeting the same 4 or 5 friends, and that at work you are working with the same circle, you're not networking. And if you network when you boss, ab mere ko job chahiye, let me start calling up my network, that's not a network either. Network is a genuine interest in just trying to know about someone or about something, talking to people, just expanding your horizons. Yeah, and network means a couple of big things on networks. So networks will help you in crisis, but they have to get built during peacetime. If you look to build a network during crisis or during war, you won't be able to. Yeah, by that time, either the trust is established or not. Nobody is going to give you stuff, just like in COVID. Yeah, it's tough to make good new friends during COVID. The old friends will be there. You can go see them, meet them, but making new friends is tougher. So look to build those networks during peacetime. They will come help you, yeah, during times of crisis. And during times of crisis, if you have a network of 10 things, like you need a connect into a particular company, you want somebody who has that particular expertise who will tell you whether this idea will work or not. You're looking for a job and you tell 10 people who are in your close network that look, and which is what I had to do, that I'm thinking of moving out. Can you help me think of some things? There's 1 in 10 chance that anybody will come back to you with something. But within those 10 network, 1 in 10 chance gives you a probability of one of finding something. Okay, and then my last thing is on building a brand. Build a brand. And building a brand does not mean that being showy or being out there and all that. And building a brand means knowing who you are and being okay to portray that. Yeah, building a brand means thinking about, do you need Twitter? Do you need LinkedIn? What kind of posts do you want to do? Yeah, it also means what do you want to look and feel like? Yeah, what do you want to come across as a business leader? If you want to, or all of that, you need to be able to portray that. What do you want to show up as? Yeah, do you want to be a leader where you're running big teams? Then you need to be a good communicator. Are you building those skills? Yeah, all of those things. Think about your brand now. Yeah, and going back to the car example, doesn't matter whether you are a Camry or a Suzuki or a Ferrari. Each one has a customer of its own, a market of its own, and a brand of its own. Yeah, think about what is your brand and think about it now. You can start that anytime. Yeah, which means how do you come across? How do you do a bunch of those things? So here's a little bit. So those were my 5 things, Jitin. So back to your questions.
Yeah, so we did have a question very specifically about how to build networks. So hopefully, Vinod, that sort of answers your question.
On network, I think somebody asked me this question. I was with a different group a couple of weeks ago. They asked me, I don't have time to build networks. One easy way is, doesn't matter, like if you are in an industry of particular kind, that industry would have a forum. Start volunteering at that forum. Yes, start putting some of your time out there. They will have agendas or they will put together events and all. Start to take some portion of that event. You will start to meet 10 people from your industry. The event will start to get some 2 or 3 senior speakers. You will have the opportunity to reach out to those speakers, connect with them, many of them. You'll just get to see, hear, build new things. Yeah. Right. Anything at all. So that's one good example how you can build networks in your regular ways. Okay, next.
So there are a lot more questions, but I'm very cognizant of the time. And one of the questions I think Mamta is asking, who's also doing a vote of thanks. So I'll throw it over to Mamta. You can ask your question and then say the vote of thanks.
Hello, Mr. Ashish. It's been a great time so far. I had a question actually. How did you leverage your MBA from Duke University? How did it equip you on your path to CXO?
Okay, very simple. It helped me ton on finance. Yeah, big time on finance because I knew nothing about it. And really, I think I enjoyed numbers and even thought about, should I do something in banking as a career? But I love the business aspects a lot more. A1. 2, it showed me the power of networking in many ways. Yeah, and I was a horrible networker. Yeah, even at IIT, though I was the absolute worst. Even at Schlumberger, once I came back from the field, I just wanted to be with my friends and all. So it showed me how important the whole networking aspect was. And 3, plain and simple, it got me into McKinsey, which taught me a lot of other things around strategy and million other things. I think the MBA just opened my eyes into so much of it that was possible and available. Mamta.
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everyone. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Ashish for accepting our invitation and be here. Thank you, Mr. Ashish, for your valuable time. This happens to be our 5th session in LeaderSpeak Series, and the PGPEM cohort is very obliged to have you as a speaker today. So we have had the luck to have some amazing insights on consulting, on how Mr. Ashish has started growth strategies in different set of product lines, on handling uncertainties in various business scenarios, how Ashish dealt with energy transition in GE, how digital affects one industries, how it is important to be adept with digital and finance, and how to read some important signals through networking, how to build a brand for oneself. But more importantly, there are some simple truths in life which one often tends to overlook. And Mr. Ashish, it is amazing how you touched upon some anecdotes on that front subtly, even as we were discussing some very technical aspects. I'm pretty sure the audience struck a chord with these specific thoughts, actually, along with me. One may always lose one's way, but I think one will always find one's way back home to their calling. And thanks, Mr. Ashish, for that assurance time and again that it all works out at the end eventually. Another thought is thinking through situations. how experience is important, and how one can't take others' observation and insights and experiences for granted, because even the greatest of the leaders are always speaking from their own experience. Another thought is flying high, going deep, and how to identify where one wants to go deep. Another thing is how humans are amazingly different, and it's important not to put anybody in the boxes. And then your suggestion on be really good and amazing at something, because one can't be good at everything. And yes, you did draw our attention to humanity's biggest problem, that is climate change, and how we are sort of poised to jump off the cliff to deal with it. And yes, thanks for prodding us to think that we are living in the interesting times and how to make the most out of it. Thank you, Mr. Ashish. It's been an eventful session.
Mamta, you're absolutely amazing. What I spoke in for an hour and a half, you could summarize in 2 minutes, which is an amazing trait to have. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And as we draw the session to a close, I will also thank some people who have been behind the session. Some efforts went into it. So I would like to share the credits. So thank you, PGPM office, for all the support and modalities. Thank you, Umesh, Radhika and myself were the digital media coordinators. Vishal, Jitin, Mahalingam, Bhushan, Ankita and Anupama, all these are the people behind this session. Thank you one and all. And thank you audience for being here and for all the wonderful questions.